I'm Josh Shipp, and this is the What the Speak podcast. What the Speak.
What the Speak? Episode 41. Do I have to do it?
Do you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch? If not, these expert discussions and insider tips can help you right now, today. Welcome to the What the Speak podcast. I'm your host, Brian Kelly.
Struggling with feeling comfortable in front of an audience when you present? Or maybe you're confident, but you have difficulty stumbling over filler words like and ah. Well, you can start kicking ass today by signing up for our weekly VIP updates. As a bonus, you'll also receive 11 free tips that will uncover 6 psychological secrets to public speaking, plus 5 tips on how to stop using filler words. Go to whatthespeak.com/VIP. Josh Shipp, are you ready to answer the question, what the speak?
Bring it.
Cool. All right, man. So Josh, you are hands down the best youth speaker that's out there today. You're a TV personality, a best-selling author, and a speaker, but I would love to hear it directly from you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and exactly what it is that you do?
Yeah, well, I'm certainly very flattered by your, accolades that you bestowed upon me. But to me, I guess I don't think that much of myself from time to time. I would say, in my own words, that I'm just a regular guy who had a pretty screwed up childhood, went through a lot of difficult circumstances and situations, made a lot of mistakes, made a few great choices, and had a handful of adults in my life when I was sort of careening out of control, who stepped into my life and gave me some really encouraging words and advice that I implemented. And because of that, my life changed. And because of that, I really feel a responsibility and obligation as sort of a way to say thank you to those adults, to try to be that adult for other kids and other individuals that influence young people.
That's awesome. Well, I know that you speak to a lot of different types of audiences, but would love to get a sense from you. What typically are the topics that you talk about when you get up in front of an audience?
Yeah, so the way I put it is that I help adults understand teens and teens understand themselves. And so I really sort of have 2 different camps of audiences. One is young people themselves, ranging in ages from middle school, high school, college age students, and then individuals that work with young people. So this could be parents or educators or mental health professionals or youth workers. Those are sort of the 2 different audiences. And in both of those instances, so with the young people, I'm really sharing a lot of my own personal story. I try to put it into, I like to think of it as a one-man show kind of format, where I try to really make it entertaining and funny and irreverent and like not what they're going to expect up front, because particularly with a younger audience, they're just expecting you to be boring and like yell at them and tell them like, stay out, stay in school and don't do drugs and, stop twerking or whatever. So I try to kind of break that pattern and surprise them and then share my own story. And I don't share it in an effort to say, oh, look at me or woe is me or pull out a violin and say, feel sorry for me, but rather to use it as an opportunity to illustrate, I've been through some rough stuff. Here's how I got over it. Your rough stuff is different than mine, but you have it. You're going to get more of it inevitably in life. We all are. And so here's how you can overcome that as well. And then from the other side of that, sort of the adults that are investing in young people, really that's a message of, even though we're not always grateful, even though we don't always say thank you, even though sometimes you want to like pull your hair out because we're so frustrating and difficult sometimes to get through, you're actually making a difference in my life and in those individuals' lives. And here are some stories to prove that. And here's some advice around that.
That's awesome. You know what? So many of us has had that experience where we've been in high school or whatever, and the motivational speaker comes in and talks, and there's that stereotypical, I think, picture in our minds that we all have of the motivational speaker. And to see you, step out of that mold and do something that's different, to do something that really, I think, takes people by surprise because, like you said, they're expecting something that's quite
Right.
different than what you deliver. And then B, that what you do is completely rooted in who you are as a person, your personality. It's not this false facade or this kind of cheesy veneer. It's like this is Josh, 100% pure and real, and I think it makes for quite a captivating experience.
Now, I must admit there was a lot of that cheesy veneer and sort of inauthenticity in the beginning because, I think for anyone when you're getting started speaking, and maybe for me because I was a bit younger, so I was already insecure just because I was young and because of the things I had gone through. I was so terrified, Brian, to be honest with you, to be myself.
Yeah.
I thought I'm a speaker, and who are other speakers? Well, there's Zig Ziglar, and there's Tony Robbins, and these guys, and well, they're older, and they wear suits, and they talk like this, so I need to wear a suit, and I need to talk like that, and it's nothing wrong with them being them, but it's wrong when you try to be them. It's wrong when I try to be them. And I think that's such a challenge that we face as speakers is that it's so much easier to try to copy what's proven. But when you do that, you're not unique. But when you're yourself, you're the most unique. But just to be brutally honest, it's the most terrifying because it's unproven.
Yeah. So, I mean, this kind of dovetails with where I want to go as far as your struggles. So let's talk about this a little bit more. I've got a follow-up question for you, and then we'll see if there's anything else that you would share related to struggles. But, this idea that so many of us, especially when we're first starting and we're trying to find our voice when it comes to speaking in front of an audience, would you say that was a logical place for you to start to kind of find who you were when obviously you know who you are as a person, but to figure out, how do I share that or how do I expose, the natural side of my personality in front of an audience without having this kind of facade of who I think I should be? Or do you think, had you known in advance that being naturally who you are and letting your true self shine right out of the gate would have been something that could have been accomplished had you at least thought about that?
Well, I would have hoped that I would have had the maturity and intelligence to do such. I can't promise you that I would have. Okay. I think part of the challenge, and you and I were talking about this before we started recording, is that when you're a speaker, when you're a messenger, you sort of are the product, and so your strengths will be your message's strengths. Your weaknesses will be your message's weaknesses. Your strengths will be your delivery's strengths, and on and on. So for me, I feel like so much of me trying to be someone else was just wrapped up in my own insecurities, which I have many, my own dysfunctions, of which I have many, all of that. And again, because it was unproven. And I think for me, kind of the game-changing moment was I had done a handful of talks at schools, and they would always go decently. No one would ever say that was terrible or I was offended or I didn't like it. And no one would ever say that was amazing or that was really eye-opening or quote, that changed my life, which I have a whole opinion on. But then I just remember coming to this place of like, dude, I don't if I was in the audience, I wouldn't believe any of this. Like this is not helpful. I'm like up there quoting successory posters and like, crap that's on people's bumpers of their cars. And, I mean, those have their place, but I just felt like I was kind of being a phony. And so I don't know how I mustered up the courage, but I said, this next speech, I'm just going to say what I actually think would be helpful. And I'm not going to worry about where my hands are or if I say, or any of that other stuff that matters but also doesn't. I'm just going to try to be genuine and real. And for me, and I think this is where I can make it relevant advice for anyone watching this, is I begin to think about, well, who is really my audience and why do I care about them? Not only because I went through what they went through to a certain degree, but also I have a godson named Isaiah, who I mentor in my life. And he's a wonderful young man. He's 15, but he also struggles, and he has his ups and downs, and he makes some dumb choices. And so I really began to think of that entire audience as Isaiah. And I thought, well, how do I dress when I hang out with Isaiah? I don't put on a suit and tie. And, when we go out to lunch, we joke around, but then we get real, and I try to offer him some advice. And so I thought, man, that's what I need to do with this audience, because they're ultimately, a speech is not one person to 500. It's one person to one person times 500. And so when I could really picture those 200 or 300 people, that's just a sea of Isaiahs, and I'm going to talk to him in a way in which I already have. So I have being authentic within me. It's just fear that's tripping me up. So I'm going to talk to this audience like they're Isaiah. And when I did that, the reaction was truly unprecedented. Yeah. People were like, that was awesome. And thank you for just being honest and genuine, and just on and on and on. And I was like, man, I hit a nerve. So to me, it's all about, being polished as a speaker is nice. Having advice that rhymes or whatever it is nice. Having a catchy title or slogan or whatever is nice, but authenticity trumps everything.
Josh, I've had so many people on the show that have kind of had that very same sentiment. And there's recurring themes that for those of you that have been watching or listening to the podcast for a period of time now, you start to see these things. And this is, one of those instances where, so many people have dialed right into this thing that I think is an important principle. And it's that you don't have to be polished. You don't have to be, at a certain level to have an impact in people's lives. And that just by sharing your message, your story in a way that's true to who you are, is something that will resonate so much more than if you try to do the opposite.
Absolutely.
And, I think it's so important for people, especially those that are watching or listening to this, that struggle with the fears that they have of as far as getting up in front of a group of people, that this is where it starts, that you being able to identify, A, who are you talking to? Why are you talking to them? And then B, how would you naturally talk with them if it was just you one-on-one with them?
Absolutely.
You take that and you magnify that, and then you've got a powerful presentation in front of a larger group of people. So cool. Well, Josh, aside from this particular thing, is there anything maybe related to your stage mechanics or some of those other things that are much higher level but help you get an edge, or rather, make people say, hey, I connect with this guy. He's totally cool. And man, he's just so sharp that, it just really took me to a whole new place that I really want to take action on his words. Is there anything you can share on that?
Yeah, a few things. One is I had this kind of freak experience when I was 19. I got to do a few speaking engagements with the world famous comedian Bill Cosby. And I remember once backstage, he said, hey, can I give you some advice on your talk? And I said, yeah. And he just looked at me and he just goes, you're being rude. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? I didn't say anything offensive. I didn't what's wrong with you, Bill? You eating too much Jell-O, losing your mind? What's going on? And he was like, no, you're being rude. He said, Josh, speaking is a conversation. When you tell a joke, you need to pause and let your audience laugh. And that's them talking back to you. Yeah. And then he said, also, when you say something serious or thoughtful, you need to pause. And that silence is your audience talking back to you. And that was certainly game-changing advice for me, because as a young speaker who was, stage fright and all that, I would try to rush through things because I was so terrified of forgetting something, or I didn't want to know if you were going to laugh because I assumed you wouldn't, all of that. That was really game-changing for me. That's one thing. And so I really think that pause you can really, really use to your advantage to make something fairly funny actually a lot funnier, or to make something fairly powerful even more powerful. That's one thing. A second thing that I do to this day is that after every speech, I always like to talk to students and interact and that sort of thing. However, I take about 3 to 5 minutes and I write down, 1 or 2 things that went brilliantly that I didn't expect, and 1 or 2 things that went terribly that I need to cut out. Sometimes some of my best phrases or things that people really latch onto, I just sort of say in the moment. One of my big phrases is, every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. I just said that. And I was like, man, people really resonated with that. They really latched onto it because they can say, well, I'm going to be that one adult. And so, I write that down and I say, that is so good. From time to time, you stumble onto things that are so good, they deserve to be repeated as often as appropriate and as relevant. And so that's the second thing. And then the third thing is that I always want to try to say something vulnerable that terrifies me, that actually I'm a little bit scared to do. Now this is subtle here. Number one, you never want to do therapy. You never want your speech to be therapy to your audience, where you're like throwing up on them. It's not helpful. So you want to have at least a bit of perspective on something. That's one side of the coin. But also, I never want to be one of these guys that's like, well, when I was, 5 years old and in these foster homes, I was struggling, but now my life's all together and I never doubt myself and I'm amazing. And if you buy my whatever, you'll be amazing too. Yeah. I think it's always important to remind your audience of your humanity and that you're in this together, and that really, in my opinion, the stage is not built for the speaker, it's built for the audience. It's not there to make you look good. It's there for you to articulate a message to make them look good, to make them better. And this can be a scary thing to do because you think, I'm a speaker, I need to seem like I have it together. But I would argue that your imperfections make you human, and it's that humanity that makes you influential and makes your words influential.
So this is such great stuff, and I love the insight from Bill Cosby that you shared. That's something that I think a lot of people, as they're learning speaking, that's one of those things that I think you pick up on, that you need to allow for the pause, you need to allow for that interaction with your audience. But how cool is it to hear it from Bill Cosby's mouth?
For sure. It's like, if he gives me advice, it's like, I can't go, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So your second point was really interesting, and I kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit more.
Absolutely.
In fact, I'm trying to even remember what that second point was now.
Yeah, about sort of, you want to do a diagnosis after each speech, because from time to time, you're going to stumble upon gold.
So yeah, the thing that I wanted to ask you about is, how do you do that? How do you self-assess what it was? Do you regularly have like an audio recorder on you? Do you have, a video? What are some of the ways that you're capturing that to then go back and analyze and say, wow, that statement really resonated with the audience. I need to make sure that when it's relevant and when it's appropriate, that I'm sharing that regularly.
Absolutely. Well, for this particular example I'm telling you about, it's as simple as, in the moment, I know it. And I think if you've been in front of people more than 2 or 3 times, you know when something hits. You know that typically about 40% of the audience laughs at your jokes, but you said something where 70% of them did. Or that typically there's a handful of people that are, looking around or getting distracted. But when you said that thing or shared that story, that feeling of like the room just stops. Mm-hmm. And so for this thing in particular, it's like I'll stumble upon a thing or two in each presentation, either that I should repeat or that I should never, ever repeat. And again, that for me, it's as simple as documenting it in a notebook and making note of that. Yeah. Now, to go a bit further on something you brought up, I think every speaker must watch themselves on video. And let me just say in advance, as a word of warning, it will be excruciatingly terrible and painful for anyone to do. I've been speaking, quote unquote, professionally speaking, whatever that means, for 12, 13 years now. And to this day, I try to watch myself on video, and to this day, it's painful. And it's like I need a hug and a warm glass of milk afterwards, because I'm just like, oh my God, do I really do that? But the truth is, video does not lie. Mm-hmm. Yes, you sound like that. Yes, you do that distracting thing. Yes, you ran over that point that was brilliant, that deserved a 30-second pause. If you really want to improve, have the guts, have the courage to watch yourself on video.
Absolutely. It's an immensely powerful tool. So, Josh,
let me give one other quick thing while we're there.
Yeah.
I think one of the best things if someone brings you in to speak, whether you're getting paid for it or you're just doing it, out of the service of your heart, once follow up with that person who brought you in and say, hey, most of the time they're going to say, thank you, great job, really appreciate it, blah, blah, blah. Follow up a week later and say, look, I appreciate the kind words, but I am so dedicated to my message that I always want to improve. So would you do me a favor, and could you just reply to this email and just give me one brutally honest thing that you think I could improve on? And really tell them why, because most of us, if you're a speaker, everyone says you do a great job for the most part, particularly if you're someone who's kind of intermediate or advanced. Most people are just like, yeah, you did a great job. But just ask them, please be brutally honest. Please make me cry. Please tell me something, because it's not about my ego. It's about my effectiveness. And I want to be more effective. So would you please thank me by doing that? Don't be afraid to have that honest, brutally honest feedback mechanism in your system. Again, like watching video, it's not going to be good for your ego, but it is going to be good for your effectiveness.
Yep. That's such great advice again, being able to get that constructive criticism to where you can, it's like you're committing to continually improving. And it doesn't matter if you're just getting started or if you've been doing it for years. We all can always improve how it is that we're communicating. And, I know a lot of folks who are highly paid keynote speakers that, yes, and just like yourself, Josh, committed to always finding ways to get better and better and better, because it makes you more effective. It allows you to reach so many more people in a way that you might not have ever imagined.
And I think that's part of the secret of most of those speakers that individuals admire. Yeah. I think there's maybe one or two people on the planet that are just like, at birth, just unbelievable, like a Les Brown sort of, right. But I don't know him. So maybe he does just work his butt off. But to me, it's like, my gosh, that guy is just gifted and talented. Yeah. But most speakers, you don't start good. You earn good. Mm-hmm. You can't craft a great speech. You can't craft great delivery. You earn it by doing a decent job and then reviewing it and doing a fairly decent job, and that just continues and continues and continues. And this is part of the struggle with the internet, is that you can watch speakers on video and you can see everyone, and you're going to compare where you're starting to where someone is currently. No. Don't go watch my demo video if you're starting now and say, I need to be as good as him tomorrow. Go watch my early demo video. Like, it's terrible. It's awful. You need to be committed to growing to be that good as I was when I started 10 years ago. Not now. It's not a fair comparison. You're not serving yourself well.
Yeah. Perfect. So Josh, let's talk a little bit about your unique expert perspective. So I know one of the things that you do is you've got this youth speaker university. And obviously I know you're very much committed to helping others communicate with kids. But the thing that I'm really interested in is how is it different talking to kids than it is talking to adults? I know for a lot of people, myself included, like the thought of having to get up and talk to a group of kids is a lot more maybe stressful to think, how am I going to keep them engaged? How am I going to keep them interested? Versus a group of adults, that it's like, all right, I've got this. I know how to do it. Is there any insights that you can share in this whole idea of speaking to kids?
Of course, yeah. I mean, in many ways it is different, and in many ways it isn't. One of the funny or interesting things in way in which it's different is I compare doing a school assembly to like a comedian doing an open mic night, minus your audience isn't drunk. Right. I mean, for the most part. But really my point in that is that if things aren't going well, you're going to know it. And it's not that they're going to like heckle you and like, pull out prison shanks and stab you or something. It's more so that they're going to get restless. They're going to start murmuring this and that. Whereas for the most part, adult audiences are going to kind of sit there and be polite and then give you a golf clap at the end and be like, thank God that's over. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a bit more jumping in the deep end of the pool. However, I personally feel like speaking to a younger audience is more rewarding because it is such a pivotal time in their life that simply your lessons and advice and perspective on things can truly be life altering for them if they will apply it. I feel like, man, just the response that you get when you're genuine and authentic, whether you're young, whether you're old, none of that matters. They're just looking for someone who's genuine, who will be real to them, who will speak to them like they're 22, not like they're 8 years old, and just share some practical, helpful advice that will help them. That's just amazing. And kids will come up to me and say, you changed my life. And my perspective on that is that no, if you listen to something that someone says, and then you have the guts and the audacity and the perseverance to go and implement that, you deserve the applause, not me. You changed your life, not me. I'm just glad I was able to help.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, that really resonates because I'm personally committed to being able to share whatever, advice, knowledge, expertise that I've developed over the years with an audience to help inspire them, motivate them, help them make a change. And it's like, I've never thought about it as far as, kids, speaking to an audience of kids where, quite frankly, they're probably even more open to making a change than adults are. A lot of adults get set in their ways. And, the rewarding aspect of that is really great. And I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, man. I think there's certainly so much need with young people. It is, again, as I said, such a pivotal time. Yep. And it's a time too when they're less likely to listen to their parents, even if their parents are absolutely wonderful human beings. Yep. You're just at that phase where you're trying to become independent. And so to have other caring adults who are sort of saying what mom or dad would want you to hear, but they're saying it in kind of their own unique or different way with their own flair, it's amazing. And you do, in the youth industry, you do get you do kind of get like the Beatles effect, just like the response is like crazy, like they're crying and they're laughing and they want photos and hugs and autographs and this and that. And it's very, very flattering and very cool to get those letters and those, I went to college now and I never thought this was possible. That it's just an honor. And I think for so much of us, we tend to have a heart to speak to the audience where either our life was drastically changed or that we feel the most comfortable with, or we feel like we have the most to share with. And for me, that's why, man, I'm committed to helping young people and those that influence them long term. I think there's plenty of work to be done there. And also from a business perspective, I think there's plenty of ways to scale that and to make a genuine, honest living, not through tactics, but by simply serving more and serving better and more effectively.
Sweet. Well, Josh, let's... We've had such a great discussion. Let's blow this thing out with our rapid fire Q&A portion. You ready?
All right, cool. Come on.
So I'll give you a half dozen questions. First thing that comes to your mind. So the first one is, when you give a presentation, are you a slide or no slide kind of guy?
No slides. Just me, mic stand, and a bottle of water.
How come? Why is that?
Well, mainly because I travel a lot and do this quite a bit, and I want a predictable environment.
Mm-hmm.
And some schools have awesome AV setups, and some don't. And I just want to be able to go in there and kill it with a minimal setup.
Yeah.
And I think for all of us, we cannot become dependent upon technology. It is something to enhance it. So I would challenge people: strip away the technology, get really good at the message, and then add the slides or the video or the interpretive dancing or, whatever your supplemental stuff is on top of it.
Excellent. All right. So who's one speaker that you admire the most and why?
There's a guy named Mark Sharon Brock. In my opinion, he's absolutely the best youth speaker on the entire planet Earth. He's in his 50s now, but the guy is just genuine and warm and caring and hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just hanging out with like your grandpa who's like just super funny and then just boom, super wise.
Wow. Awesome. Okay, so this one I'm really interested in hearing from you, since you do present in front of audiences of kids and teenagers. What's the craziest, funniest, silliest, most bizarre thing that might have happened to you while on stage?
Well, there's several, but the first thing that comes to mind, I've always been terrified of falling in the orchestra pit, especially in the YouTube age. I'm like, oh, dear Lord, please no. That's not what I want to become known for. But I was speaking in Kansas City in front of about 2,000 students at a convention center, and all of a sudden I see the back door like crack open because the room's real dark except for the stage lights. Mm-hmm. And then I hear this chanting, and it's like this group of 50 protesters who are walking down the aisle and like chanting something I can't exactly make out and protesting. And then I'm like, excuse me, do you know that this is FCCLA? And they go, oh, I guess we're in the wrong room. See you later. And it was like, what? Like, why is someone protesting me? What is happening? It was super strange, but anytime, I think I just, after they left, I said to all the kids, I said, everybody look at me, stay in school. But anytime that stuff comes up, my rule of thumb on that is that if it just bothers you, don't acknowledge it, don't make a thing of it. If it distracts everyone, you got to make a deal out of it. You got to kind of roll with it, have fun with it. Because everyone notices it. So let's call out the elephant, and now let's move on.
Yeah, that's great. Oh man, protesters. That's a new one. I haven't heard that.
Pitchforks, and I was like, what is happening? I thought a buddy was like playing a large scale practical joke on me.
My gosh. Well, I think it's funny too that they're like, oh, we're in the wrong place.
Yeah, maybe you guys should double check. You're clearly not effective protesters, or at least, you need to download Google Maps.
Exactly. All right. So clearly, you're a great success, Josh, but I would love to hear straight from you. How big of an impact has your ability to communicate had on your business and the career that you've kind of chosen?
I mean, it's absolutely paramount. Putting myself in a situation where I was decent at something in the beginning, but I fell in love with it. And because I fell in love with it, I was committed to going through the pain and the years and the tears of really, really honing it and eventually becoming pretty good. I mean, it's had a significant impact on my business, on my life. We've been able to reach millions and millions of young people and have generated revenues of millions of dollars, but by adding value. And that's what I love about speaking as a profession, is that truly long term. I mean, you can fool people for a little bit, like a good movie trailer can fool you on a movie for one weekend, but then your friends tell you it's actually not a comedy, it's a depressing, terrible film. Truly to make more money long term, the only way you do that is more impact, serving more. If you write a book and you know how to sell it to 10 people, it helps 10 people and you make, $100. But if you learn the strategies and you're committed to the craft and you figure out how to sell 10,000 books, economists might say, well, you've made 10,000 times more money, but I would say yes, and you've made 10,000 times more impact. So that I love that accountability in what we do, of people that, for the most part, there's some, slime balls out there, but for the most part, people that are highly rewarded monetarily in this business do such because they add meaning and value in individuals' lives.
Yep. So true. Well, Josh, what's one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's just getting started pursuing this path of speaking, whether it's professionally or whether it's just, to get up in front of a small group and share their story? Is there anything that you would say to that individual?
Again, just understand that through repetition, you're going to earn the right to be great one day. So as many times as you can, get up on a stage, share your message, make those notes of what went well and what didn't, and wash and repeat. Be careful thinking that you don't have what it takes because you're not as sharp or polished as the person that you admire. They weren't either at some point. And so, really study not those end results, but those beginning steps. And that's what you need to focus on. What is your next step? What is your beginning step? Continue to hone and polish that. And then eventually one day you'll be pretty dang good as well.
Excellent. Well, Josh, we're going to have links to your website, your social media profiles, any other resources over in our show notes at whatthespeak.com. And I want to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story and some really amazing insights into the experiences that you've had and how that can benefit those that are watching or listening. And just thanks for being somebody that truly kicks ass when they speak, present, or pitch.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I've been excited to be a part of this. I love what you're doing, and I wish I was around when I was getting started. So thanks for nothing for not starting it 10 years ago.
Yes, I'm so sorry, but thank you for being here for those who are now in that place and really got some great advice from you.
You bet, man.
Today's guest certainly had some amazing insights they shared. If you'd like to purchase a copy of their latest book, visit this episode's show notes over at whatthespeak.com and click the link at the bottom of the page to immediately order their book.
All right, here we go with the outro.
Thanks so much for joining us today on What to Speak. Be sure to visit whatthespeak.com for show notes on every episode and to sign up for our email list to stay updated on resources that'll help you kick ass when you speak, present, or pitch.